It came from.
It came from. This is the part of the show where we search all over the internet to bring you topics the community is talking about. If you find any of these answers useful wherever you're at, just give us a like to help other people find this content so it might be able to help them too. Let's talk about this first one here. This is by Throwaway Person 222. They clearly don't want to be mentioned on the show, and that's fine. Or mentioned on Reddit. Anyway, so this is a full-time job contract, part-time job for 10 hours a week. Okay, they go on to write, I have a full-time product design job at a tech company, and my friend who I worked with previously reached out to me about a possible contract side gig at her company, a design agency mostly designing marketing materials or marketing collaterals for 10 hours a week. I was a graphic designer first prior to being a product designer. Told her I'd only be able to work weekends, and she's fine with it. She knows how I work and knows I'm dependable. Just curious if this would be a conflict of interest to my full-time employer. Barry, let's talk about this, because have you ever taken a full-time job with a part-time gig, and has it been successful? Or do you know anybody?
I know people who've definitely done it, and I've sort of done it myself because, when you take on not necessarily the full-time job, but you've taken on a large contract and then another contract on the side, that's definitely bust your hours, and it means that you're working long hours. And this January might be just a really good example of that, because the midnight oil is being burned. It's interesting that the question here that they pose actually is around, would it cause a conflict of interest to the full-time employer? Now, the answer to that is clearly, well, it depends. Depends on the on if it's in the same domain, if it's in the same marketing space. And really, the best person to ask actually is your full-time employer, because sometimes, depending on how they're written, you might have clauses in your contract that says you can't do it. So, from a purely legal perspective, check your contract first, your full-time contract, because there's a number of things that could catch you out. Not least of all being that you might be able to do that side gig, but any monies or if you anything else that you earn from that, the company might be able to get back from you, which is an unpleasant way to find it. I do know somebody who lost a patent that way. So I would say, from the professional side of things, from the company side of things, check your contract, have a chat. It's better in most cases to be open and upfront, depending on that relationship you have with the employer. But there is another side of this that I would really push, that if you're working 37 hours a week or 40 hours a week, whatever your contract is, and then you're doing another 10 hours a week for something else, there are only so many hours in the day, literally. And the road to burnout is right there. So just be very careful with your own, literally with your own mental health, and about how much effort and time you're putting into it, and think about whether you should be doing quite so many hours in what you're doing. He says from very personal experience.
Yeah.
Hands up who hasn't been in that situation. Everyone keeps a hand down. But what about you, Nick? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it depends. Hit the button. Because I think, look, like, this is full transparency. I do this. This is something that I do, something that my employer knows about. I work part-time, and I set very clear boundaries, right? Like, my full-time job is my priority, and the other employer knows this. And it's one of those things where, yes, you need to read your clauses, read the job offer, read all the new hire material, check with HR. Like, check with HR and make sure that they know what's going on and that you're fully transparent. Don't try to play it off on the side. I think there was an article in the middle of last year that was talking about two people who, like, worked at the same two companies, and they just kind of hired each other and just said they were doing all the work, and they were full-time at both places. And so, but they would only do work at one of the places, and the other would cover the other work. It was an interesting article, and they were basically getting by with double salaries. Don't do that. That's my word of advice. Don't do that. I think it's, to me, there's only, like you said, there's so many hours in the day, and so something will need to take a hit, whether that's one of your hobbies that you do in your free time. Just be prepared for that, and do communicate with both parties, right? Both the part-time and the full-time about your commitment. And I think the biggest part of this is to build in flexibility with that part-time and say, look, like, I don't know if I'll be able to commit to 10 hours a week. I can commit to 5 with maybe a flex to 10. And I think giving a range will give you the opportunity to not get burned out, right? 1 extra hour a day spent on this thing might not burn you out. It may burn you out. You don't know. And so just kind of, what's best for you. Just do it. I don't know.